Alrighty, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As always, and as expected, July 2024 is over. I can't believe it's August. It feels like the year is flying by. We only, have 5 months left, but again, that's about, 40%? So still plenty of time left in the year, but I just can't believe it's been 7 months. Anyways, jumping to the actual good stuff here. $86,000 for July. Not disappointed with it by any means. In fact, very, very happy about it, how it turned out. As we'll go into the video here, though, you'll see there's really going to be about 2 or 3 really big mistakes. I would say call it like 2.5 mistakes that I would argue almost probably could have doubled this month. Maybe at the minimum gave it a little 50% boost. Which I think means a lot during summer trading. Now, I would say this is a busier summer than I've experienced, and by no means would I think July was slow. I think there were opportunities all day long. In fact, maybe even too much. I took like 72 trades for the month, which is a lot more than I'm usually taking. I wouldn't necessarily call it over trading because I'm still around a 62 or 63% win rate, which is around how much I typically win. If I was losing a lot more, then it'd be like, yeah, you're probably taking trades that you shouldn't be taking, or the market just isn't good in my favor. But in this case, it was. A lot of singles as well. So like I said, I think there were 2 or 3 mistakes that if I had, traded those better. One mistake's a loss. Let's go back. 1 mistake was a loss. 1 mistake was a missed trade per se, and then then the first mistake is just left tons of money on the table. So all 3 combined, this should easily be a 120, 130, 140, maybe even 150 kind of K month. But I just say that because during summer, I think it matters more. I think the margin for error is a little bit smaller than typically what has been busier months for me, or I guess more opportunistic months for me, which are usually December, January, February, March, etc. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right in. You'll notice as we go through, there's going to be a lot of more singles. Like I said, the couple mistakes that I made really prevented me from having any one huge gain. It was a bunch of smaller trades just kind of added up. I think I only had like 2 or 3 trades that were over 10K, which is not like me. Usually I'm having a nice handful of them. So anyways, number 1, XTIA. You'll also notice this month there's a lot of gap and craps all throughout the month. I think honestly I didn't look at the exact P&L for gap and craps specifically, but a lot of gap and craps did help me out this month in particular. First one being XTIA. They changed their ticker name. I forget what their ticker once was, but as you can see on the chart in just the last year, anytime this ticker gaps up, it just gets absolutely crushed. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 5. This is the only run there's not. This is kind of one, another one. So just a serious handful of any serious gap up is met with selling. And so normally how I like to trade gap ups, if we go into the intraday chart, I probably even can't get it because it's over a month now. If we go on the 1st of August or July, sorry. No, we can. Yeah. Again, if you looked at that daily chart every day, it did gap and crap. There was almost never a spike. And so normally I'm not one with gap and crap to short out right out the open. I typically like to wait for some kind of confirmed weakness before getting in. Yes, it means I chase a lot, but it also means I typically find having a better win rate, which I slightly care more about in this particular scenario for this setup. But this one was different. I shorted it right out the open. I said, this thing is such a turd. I don't know how low it's going to go, but I know it's not going to go high that much. And so I did. I shorted, I think my average was 70, and I covered in the 40s here. If we look at the trades, yeah, right here. Okay, just shorted the open, covered it a little bit red-green, covered the rest in this dip, in the low 40s, and started off the month nice with a $9,500 profit. So that was great. This is probably the biggest gap and crop profit of the month. To start the month, it was just $9,500, and that was that. So pretty straightforward. Not all of them, for those who do trade gap and craps, not all of them go red like this. So to have them go red like this, it's always kind of fun to catch that kind of a dump. So next big win, you kind of see it here, but we'll go to the chart first. OPTT. If you've been paying attention at all to the small cap space, especially since T1 has been implemented, there are a lot of short-term breakouts, right? There are a lot of stocks that maybe get a gap up or one kind of one-day run, and then within 1, maybe 2, in this case, I guess OPTT was 3 days later, there's a gap up, coming very quickly, right? Again, partially because buy-ins are sooner, I have personally not experienced any buy-ins being sooner, also because I don't swing a lot of day one or single day runners. I usually like the big movers. But nonetheless, I couldn't ignore this move on OPTT breaking out over the original wick of high 27. Just barely broke out, right? Just barely closed over the breakout level, right? This close was 28.8 and over 27 technically is a breakout. It wasn't the strongest by any means if we go into that intraday. Not the strongest at all, but still pretty solid. In fact, waited till afternoon to really, it double topped perfectly, or not double top, but like kind of slightly in the 26s and then perfectly at 27 here. And then late day, which actually I like that a lot. I remember actually buying it right here, if I'm not mistaken, right? Look at the trades. Yeah. Oh yeah. I started in on this move thinking it was going to break. So I kind of bought right into the breakout level and then I added on the actual break and then into after hours. I definitely sold some. If we go there, yeah, I sold a little bit. Let me try to make this bigger so you can see. That doesn't really work. Let's do this. Here we go. Yeah. Sold a little bit in after hours at whatever price that was. If we go back to the chart, that was at 36. I was up about 37. I think I had my order set there. So once I was up 10 cents a share, I sold a little bit. But I did want to hold some overnight. I did think there was room for this to see the 40s. Part of me felt a little bit greedy because I'm like, it's in the high 30s. Like, do I really want to wait for 40? But the great part was, if we go into what happened on the second, they PR'd, right? So the great part is I was asleep this entire time. I woke up around early 8 a.m.-ish, so somewhere up here. Saw that they PR'd, saw that it went way higher than just the 40s. It was into the mid 40s, even 50s. I then sold the rest, right? Sold into the spike there, and then sold the rest into what looked like it was 50 cents. Didn't touch it again. That was that. But again, because I got these extra sells off at a much higher price than I thought, I ultimately ended up locking in 11K. Which is much better than what I had anticipated making. So right off the bat, start the month, as you see, my first week was my best week. It was kind of all downhill from there to some degree. Really the first 2 weeks were my month, and the last 3 have just kind of been between borrow fees and the losing weeks have kind of been breaking even. So to start the week, that was a really good, 1-2 day punch to get those 2 big trades already out the window. Now moving on though, or actually, yeah, and then so the next big trade of this week was NKLA. So NKLA, I don't really know what setup you would call this anymore. Not anymore, or like what I call it, but there's been a lot of highly dilutive tickers in the market, right? If you paid attention at all to any of these that are some of just the worst, the NKLAs, the FFIEs, the MULNs, a little bit of the AMC, if it didn't squeeze with Roaring Kitty, right? They just constantly offering after offering after offering, and a lot of times just reverse split after reverse split. NKLA did do a reverse split. It was right on the 25th of June, and so I actually started swinging it, thinking that they're reverse splittings, one, to keep them above $1, but two, because they have plenty more to dilute. And so I actually swung this from like that at 10 average. And ended up covering it, I think, around $8. I think I was just going to see how hard it can fade. And once it breaks over previous day's highs, I was going to cover it. So I ended up covering over this high, which was like 816. And of course, it wicked this day. So I did cover it there. Locked in like 9K as well. So that was on this week. So yeah, just a great start. Ultimately, finishing that week up 46K. And then we give it back-to-back 40K week as well. So if we jump into that one, a little more losses here. Obviously, on the 9th was my biggest red day of the month, partly due because of SNGX. SNGX here, again, another gap and crap. This was one that actually was my biggest loser on the gap and crap side. Yeah, way bigger. I lost 9K on this one. If we go into the actual trade here on the 9th, let's go into it. As you can see, just a huge squeezer, right? And, if you know how I like to trade, I like to look for weakness. And so, of course, this weakness stuff move totally got me sucked in, right? Only to hold it and then squeeze me out pretty quickly there. Never touched it again. That's the good part. I did not let the loss compound by any means. But again, if you look at the trade, let's get rid of some of these here. Yeah, there it is. Pretty quick, shorted into that sideways action and then immediately when it broke high day, took some slippage as well, unfortunately. But yeah, lost about 9K on that one, so that wasn't too fun. Which also resulted in this day, or not this day. What am I going with the chart? Resulted in this day. Where the other losses came from, I forget what the ticker was. Maybe I'll look at the trade real quick. Let's see, where is it? And as you can see, there's plenty more trades we won't go over just because I don't have time for it. You know, we're only going to go over about maybe 10 to 15 trades, and there's 70 of these bad boys. Where is it? ANVS. Yeah, ANVS was another one. ANVS. Yeah. ANVS was a red day that I tried to short, and I got squeezed out twice, pretty much. Yeah, it was on this day, the 9th, right? And it actually ended up, no, wait, did it end up still going red? Or was it this day? No, it had to have been this day. Yeah, let's go into the 9th real quick. Obviously, no, that's 9th. That's the day I lost 20 grand. Yeah, Tuesday. Literally, I was short either overnight, slightly on small size, or I eventually added pre-market or right out the open here, only to then stop out right into 16. I thought it was going to break 16, even though it held perfectly. Then for it to die and me re-short on a new low day at 15, and then you know the rest. It comes back to high day. I cut over 16 again, so a double whammy. I lost it again, another 8 or 9K there. So between the two losses that day alone, immediately put me down 20K very quickly. So that wasn't too fun. If we keep moving on, though, one thing you'll notice about my month here, if we go back, you'll see the percentages are quite off. I mean, I don't love the average loss to average gain as well, but wait 1 second here. My lead analyst, come here, likes to hang out here. Say hello to YouTube. Sorry, honey. Stay on the floor there. She wants to give me stock picks, but the market's not open. Silly. Anyway. Tesla, with put options, I dabbled in this month a little bit. So the 21% win rate and then the 15% lose rate, a little bit skewed, obviously, but then even more skewed, you'll see it in the biggest percent gainers and the biggest percent loss. You know, I did not make 180% on a typical long setup, nor did I lose 91% on a typical, long or short setup. These were both the put options. If we go into it on Tesla, where were we? Let's go back here. Let's actually get rid of some of these, save some room here. Tesla. We won't go into the really intraday because again, it was me trading the puts. So I don't really have an options chart of it. I didn't save that, but it was typically, or the trade was on this day. I remember trying the 90% loss. I think was on this day on the 5th. I'd lost like 3 or 4K, something small. Thinking that it was going to die, but it did recover. You see the little wick there. But then this was the day where I think Tesla announced that they were delaying their robotic, I forget what it was, something robotics, right? And that just crushed it. I actually missed that initial move, but I did get short on the bounce and then took it overnight and immediately sold my puts out the open at 235. In fact, I actually picked a 235 strike for that Friday. So the fact that it opened at 235, I said, yep, get me out. I don't need to gamble whether this goes lower or not. I already was, I was up 180%, so we're just going to take it. But what did I get in? We'll just go into the intraday because I'm curious. I remember what bounce it was. I just want to know the price. I think it was like high 240s. If we go into the 11th. Yeah, it was this move. So when it started bouncing up into here is when I started actually buying those puts, and then when it was in the high 240s. And then again, got out when it went the next day. It opened up at 245, pretty much where it was by after hours. So that was a little bit of a cushion extra there. Ultimately made like 6K total on those puts. So that was nice. And here comes the first big mistake that I'm referring to. KZIA. So KZIA here, an incredible runner. I think this was for at least my style, this was like the best setup for me by far, bar none. Except I just screwed it up. I really did. And so we'll talk about it. Essentially took it overnight from this day on the 11th into this day on the 12th. Covered it all on the 12th, even though my plan was to take it, probably sub 70, honestly. I thought bare minimum I should be holding till the 80s, maybe even the 70s. And what do you know, if I just had one more day of patience in me, I would have made it to the 60s, right? It would have been much, much, much better. But let's go into why I think I made that mistake when I kind of self-reflect. If we go into the intraday, I actually can just go to like a whole monthly chart and just see the whole thing. I think there's a mix of things. One is that I just had a much lower entry than I wanted, and so by the mere fact that this bounced back late day above 1 again, I just got spooked out. I kind of lost my my stamina, so to speak, because again, let's just go to the entry so you see what we're dealing with here. Yeah. So when it blew out, when it had its kind of blowout morning spike, in the morning here, I actually didn't think about shorting it. I wanted a little bit higher. I thought it can go like 170-ish. It would get me a little bit interested, but it failed. And then I started being a little, I wouldn't say I was bullish, but I was, the fact that it was starting to like double and triple bottom here at the 120s, I thought this might support itself and go on a second run. But then once it, kind of quadruple bottomed at the 120s and then cracked it, I was like, okay, that clearly was the blow off top. Maybe I was being a little bit too picky, a little bit too greedy, thinking that it was going to go higher. But now that it's failed so heavily and it's up from 20 cents, and I knew they had like either a lot of dilution coming or just a lot of dilution already available, I thought to myself, I'm going to take the chances that it's never even going to see these prices again, and I'm going to want to get short into bounces and hold it overnight. So that's what you did see here. I do start getting short into kind of this bounce. My mistake was then adding here just too early in the day. Did I expect it to bounce back like it did? Not necessarily, but I know it's possible, right? These top day tickers these tickers that put in a top day but don't go red and actually close green, there's always, not always, I should say, majority of the time, there's always some kind of last gasp, right? There's either shorts who don't want to hold overnight, so they cover. There's longs who are like, hey, it's still green in the day, it might gap up. So there's always some kind of push into the close. I didn't really account for that when I added here, right? I didn't really think about the fact that, maybe these ads are not the best price and I could get this same price later in the day if it doesn't die. And so, yeah, I'm adding here thinking it's also going to go much lower, right? It touched 90 cents. I thought it would go to the 80s like today, right? Because I think red-green, right? If we go, what was red-green? Red-green was, it's 64. So I thought to myself, it's probably not going to go red by any means, but if red-green's at 64, this could easily see the 80s. That was kind of my thinking. So the fact that it only went to 90s put me in a predicament now where it's like, okay, I'm not covering these ads. But then again, I didn't account for the fact that, if this bounces back, now my average is a little bit too low. I had like a 110, 111 average. So when I much should have preferred a 115, maybe even 120 average if I was much better on just the entries and not getting any into weakness here. So come, late day and into the close and then into after hours, when it started squeezing, I actually downsized here. I was on the verge of cutting it. Had I started seeing 140 prints, I would have cut it. So I did downsize and then I quickly realized, that's probably the failure. So did add that size back and then got the fade back down to 1 by the close, which was great. This fade here was kind of confirmation for me that this was going to gap down and this play was going to work, given there was nothing sketchy in after or in pre-market. There could have been another PR, who knows. But by the time pre-market came around, we were gapping down to that low ones level, which is great. That's the awesome part. But again, in my trade plan or in my thesis, I'm like, this company is going to fade immensely once it's over. Like, I am still waiting for a minimum sub 80, if not sub 70. And so you see here when it has the red day and it only gets to, 86, I'm like, nope. Like, I have a trade plan. I'm sticking to it. Even if it means holding for multiple days, like I think it's not, in the midday, I was like, this is going so sideways. I think late day, this will crack. That was kind of the thinking. But when it curled back, in the moment, I just lost sight of the main trade plan I had. I lost sight of the kind of conviction I had. And so, no, I did not cover into one, but when it pulled back into the close here, into the 90s, it was one of those things where, and many traders know the feeling, when you start covering and all of a sudden it's like, you can't stop covering, right? And it's like, I didn't even think about downsizing. It's like, once I took a partial size off, it was like, no, just cover the rest, just cover the rest, just cover the rest, right? Without even then, again, completely losing sight of the overall original thesis that I had. And so when we go and look at my covers here, right, I am just covering it all right into the close. It was like, again, my emotions got over me and it just became just get me out. I don't want to be anymore. Why? I had the fear, the fact that this shouldn't even have gone back over 1. And the fact that it did, I almost started, again, I tried to think about my P&L. I was like, my average is too low to be overly patient to some degree. Like, my average is 111. If this thing comes in the next day and spikes or pops or does anything that I don't expect, like this bounce here, I do not want to be giving back my gains. Like, I do not want to deal with another one of these after I just dealt with it the day prior. And so I think I lost, again, that emotional stamina, that emotional barrier to allow me just to think logically. I kind of my battery got low. And so I just covered it all. I didn't even think about reshorting. And by the next day, we're gapping down sub 80. So like there was no world where I wanted to chase. And lo and behold, not only does it go to sub 60, it ends up being 50. right? The low 50 or mid 50s by after hours. So would I have covered it all here? No, right? I'm not going to be perfect. But again, like I said, my original plan was a minimum sub 80, if not sub 70. So let's say my average cover was like 69 or 70. Let's call it 70 even. I mean, I had 100,000 shares. I covered 100,000 shares at like 93, 94. I mean, we're talking a whole extra 20 grand at the minimum, just waiting to get a 70 cover or better. And again, I locked in 11 grand. So we're talking a 30 grand trade instead of an 11 grand trade. It just would have been a huge, huge difference. And again, it just didn't happen that way. So that was really unfortunate and frustrating because, again, I kind of knew it in the moment, or at least I had a high conviction in the moment that like this runner was going to be it for me this month. Like if there was one runner that was going to give me a big win, it was this one. And I just screwed it up, right? I just lost my, again, logical battery, so to speak. And I gave into the emotions and just covered with the fear of giving money back when the fear was just all in my head. There was never really there. It was, it wasn't happening. So that's that. And again, that was part of, this day here on the 12th. And the rest of the gains on the 12th came from BDCC. BDCC, if you know this kind of chart, you know exactly what this is. This is an old school OTC pump and up. They're unfortunately, they just, I wouldn't say non-existent now. They happen maybe a couple times a year, 3 or 4 times a year max. They used to happen a dozen plus times a year, which was great, but they have just become more extinct as time has gone on, but they are still around sometimes. And so I did get short into around 80 cents. It did kind of dump, but I didn't get covered because it's a little bit on the liquid side. Wave 2 happened. I then started scaling in short, $1 plus, and then it came out and got the, caveat emptor skull and crossbones rating from OTCmarkets.com, which, crushed it. And then I covered the rest in like the 20s and 30 range. So I ended up making like 19K on this one, which is cool. Again, it wasn't the most liquid. So making 19K on a play like this was fairly large for me. Again, not every day you see this. In fact, not every month or every year you really see these, or every quarter, I should say. But it did happen, so that was a good one. Ultimately leading, most of my week coming from Friday and then giving me a back-to-back, 40K week. So on to week 3, you can clearly see not much happened. In fact, it was just kind of battling back and forth. So really nothing much. When I look at the trades, again, a lot of singles, a lot of 2, 3, 4K wins mixed with then a lot of, 2, 3, 4K losses. Just nothing, kind of contributed to this kind of poor risk reward in terms of averages. Just gave me back and forth. And so I think if we look at like a couple examples, AUR was like a red day I wanted to look for, specifically on this day, on the 16th. And it just came back on me, right? It just wasn't, the daily chart looked great, but in terms of how it actually played out, it just wasn't there, right? Let's see, and this sucked me in, right? This moved naturally, like I think anyone would, sucked me in. It looked good, but then it just started grinding back and I stopped out, right? Where is it? We'll get rid of KZIA. Oh, and this BDCC, me covering on that day in the 20s. So that was cool. Yeah, AUR. Got sucked in obviously on the red-green move. Naturally, there's really no way I would have played this differently. Like I would have trusted this 10 times out of 10. It held. It came back. I tried to short one more time, thinking maybe it's going to go red again, and I took another small loss. I lost like 4K on this one, or like 3,800. So small loss there. And then another like gap and crap style play, STX or SXTP. This one will actually tell a story for my next mistake. It'll be on a different ticker, but this is one of them. So this was a nice gap and crap, huge fader, right? Went from, spike to 60, died to 50s. I got short at around 50, or like high 40s, 49-ish. And then it just faded beautifully all day long. I mean, these covers were way too early. Normally, I like waiting for not necessarily the last minute of the day, but certainly the last like 30 to 15 minutes of the day. And lo and behold, that shows you why. At least on this one in particularly, like just got obliterated to red green. And like I said earlier, most will, if they go red green or if they go red, it'll usually be pretty ugly in the morning. Like you'd see like what we saw on XTIA, where it just gets crushed immediately in the morning. This one was pretty cool that it got crushed into the close. Now, you might ask, Kyle, why did I cover so early? I don't remember what it was on Thursday night. I didn't go out. I wasn't like up late. I just think I got a terrible night's sleep on Thursday night going into Friday, which this was on Friday of this week, right? This was on Friday of right here. And all I can think about on STXP here was taking a nap. Like, that's all I could think about. Like, the fact that I even took the short on SXTP, I was, in hindsight, I was happy because it was a profitable trade. Had it been something that caught and squeezed me out, I was going to be super pissed because I didn't even want to trade that day. I was like, I am so tired. All I can think about doing is taking a nap. And so literally I got short. Once it died around here, I was like, screw this. I am putting my stop. I'm putting covers orders in. I'm putting a stop in. I am going to take a nap. So I pretty much napped this entire time, I think until pretty much here, and then cover the rest on this dip only to then see it die. But essentially, whether I took a nap or not, I was mentally checked out. I was not there. I did not care to trade anything else. The fact that I was even in SXTP to begin with was already a stretch for me. I just was not there mentally. That was a mistake because I wasn't there mentally. It allowed me to not even look at SERV as a ticker. SERV at the time pre-market was another gapper, right? And again, naturally, when I see a gap up, a huge gap up of 60, 70, 80, 90%, 100%, I think, okay, gap and crap. Now, SXTP, I liked more. I liked the lower price range. I liked just how it traded. And I said, I'll give this one, I think it gapped up higher percent-wise, right? I liked this one, so I took that one over SERV. And this is where the mentally checked out plays a role because I didn't even look at the SERV news. Didn't even acknowledge it. Didn't even, again, so mentally checked out, just saw that it wasn't a gapper I liked, saw that I didn't want to trade it anyway, let alone, one gapper. Didn't even look. Okay, I get back, I see SXTP, right? I cover it here. I see this fading, but then I also see SERV. We'll get rid of that one real quick. I also then see SERV. If we go back here, let's just go again to the intraday. I see SERV having a huge run, right? And I'm like, and again, in my checked out brain, all I thought was from the morning. I'm like, okay, great, good thing I didn't short that one. Like, good thing I didn't try to treat that as a gap of crap because I would have stopped out. And look how awesome and big it's ran. Again, still into the close, didn't think anything of it, didn't look into anything of it, just saw that it ran and that I avoided a loss, right? Come the next week, okay, I then come pre-market. I'm much more focused. I've had the weekend to rest up. I come back well rested. I see this thing had touched 13 pre-market, and I go, what on earth happened? It's like the mental clarity that I should have had Friday morning just hit me like a brick wall Monday morning, and I said, what on earth was the news here? I immediately go to the news and I see the NVIDIA, I see the Uber news, and I'm like, Kyle, you idiot, right? This was a carbon copy of SOUN, right? For those who were around back then, I'm sure most of you are because it was recent. Let me go back to the chart here. Let me make this bigger. For those, again, who were part of the NVIDIA AI craze, NVIDIA owned shares of SOUN from years ago. But because NVIDIA is hot, so is every stock that NVIDIA owns. And SOUN is one of them. And it went on this huge run, right? This massive run, this incredible breakout over $4 here. And so when we get something like SERV, I mean, one, the volume was huge. It was like 1 or 2 billion shares in dollar volume, not to mention this beautiful hold. Like it would have been, even if I missed this move and I just actually still came to the market, closed, saw the news. I mean, this is a great long buying anywhere in this area, risking this low of like 470, or not 470, 670, and buying in the 720, 730, 740s, risking that low. It's still a great trade especially over the weekend. Like it was a perfect trade to be taking over the weekend. Perfect. Like for my style, and I don't long much, but if I'm longing something, it looks exactly like this. Given the news, given the weekend, over the weekend, everything about it. And again, I was just so mentally not there. So coming in Monday morning, I'm like, Kyle, you idiot. Like again, I'm not going to sit here and know exactly how much I would have made, but believe me, it would have been another 5 figures easily. Maybe even 20 plus, right? It would have definitely been over 10, maybe 20. Who knows how I would have been aggressive then. Again, it's in total hindsight, so I can't tell you how aggressive I would have been. But I definitely would have taken it, and I just didn't, So that was big mistake number 2, is that I just missed out on another huge 5-figure trade. And then on top of that, it resulted in me kind of really screwing up every short on this from thereafter. If we go into this day in particular, I think I broke even on this. I shorted it here, got squeezed out. I think re-shorted into this pop, covered it super early at like 10 and 10 and a half, and then watch this fade to 8. I did have a personal schedule thing going on, so I really didn't have the mental attention span to be shorting something. It was kind of something important that I couldn't be at my screens nor on my phone for. And so I did cover it. And then after that was over, I checked back. I'm like, oh, great. I covered, super early, but again, it's all in high. There's no other way I could have played it. It just, life happened. I had a life schedule going on. And then same thing goes for here, right? If we go back on this day, same thing here. I shorted, got stopped out, reshorted, I think, into here, covered it, reshorted into this bounce, and then again, just covered early. I think I covered it all. I think I shared this chart on Twitter, right? If we go into it. So let's get rid of XXTP. We'll talk about that one in a second. SERV. Yeah, since we're on SERV, I know we're going a little ahead of the game here, but again, stopped out, reshorted, covered it, reshorted, and then covered early, missing again another $2 share of downside. So I did made like 4K on this one, or no, I made like 6K. I made 6K on this one, so that's good. But again, even overall, which we'll talk about in a second, I actually still lost money on this ticker. Like after all the trades I took on this, I still lost money, and that was mainly due because if we go back in time, when it announced the offering, where was that? Back here. Yeah. So because I missed the long, because I then kind of screwed up the short this day and was a break even, lo and behold, next day I see the offering news, and I'm like, okay, great. Screw the Nvidia news. They just offered it $6. Like this should easily fade sub 7. I wasn't even looking for 6. The fact that it just bounced into the 8s, I was like, let me get short here. I ended up getting like a 790 average, kind of adding into confirmation as it fell. Thought it was going to work, and then it just saves. Okay, bounces back. Originally, my risk was high of day, but then I said to myself, no, because if I didn't have high day risk, and if I wasn't full size, I should be adding into this move, not cutting it, and moving risk to red green. This like wick right here, I think the red green was like 880 or 881. So this wick right here just barely spiked over red green. So I almost cut it, but I wanted to say, I want to prove it to me that it's going to hold it. Thankfully, just wicked out and pulled back. But again, didn't really matter. Traded and consolidated sideways perfectly the rest of the day. Again, I was still waiting for that move, at least back to the low of day. It doesn't have to go sub 7 at that point. And then lo and behold, late day, I end up covering it over these highs into $9 for a little bit extra slippage, unfortunately. Lost like 11K. Okay, this is one of the bigger losers, or the biggest loser, I should say, of the month. And again, it just shouldn't have been 11K loss, right? It just shouldn't have been. I should have, just actually cut it over the highs and then reshorted here if I really wanted to do that. Or given the fact that I changed my plan but didn't downsize at all, is that when it did pull back here, I should have downsized, right? I just kept the full size after moving my risk higher and wider, and then taking slippage on that size, led to a much bigger loss that just didn't need to be taken. So, and I honestly blame it to the fact that maybe a little bit subconscious frustration, the fact that I missed the overnight long, I screwed up the short, and now here I am thinking, I'm going to nail this short. Wrong. So lost 11K there, and that's kind of why, even after any win after the fact, I just couldn't trade this well, unfortunately, and which sucks because again, besides KZIA, if there was another runner that would have been the moneymaker, like this was it. This was another awesome run. When I look at this daily chart, like when I 5 years from now, and I go back and look at some of the best runs or some of the charts that could have been the best winners, I look at this kind of chart, I'm like, yep, this is a huge winner. There's huge range on almost every day. When it does die, it dies massively. Like there should be no excuse reason. But again, I'm going to walk away with this I'm down like a couple grand on it. So it sucks, but it is what it is. Another big mistake, again, that would have led to, much more in gains. And yeah, so there's that. The other big mistake here, this is why I say like it's like 2.5 mistakes, because there wasn't any missed, there wasn't any missed, trades on this one. It was just me screwing up like an idiot, which was SLNA. For some reason, I can't even open up the chart anymore. But this was just a fat finger mistake, along with just being terrible at math in this very moment. Usually, I'm pretty good at math on doing my sizing and my risk management, but this time it was just a complete ding dong. So SLNA was a hot runner in the morning. Okay, you see how big the volume was. A common trend we've seen, not necessarily recently, but a lot around the time when FFIE ran, or when FFIE ran from 5 cents or 4 cents to $4, along him with a lot of other small price plays that were if they traded $1 billion in shares more in the day, the odds of them gapping up were like really high. And so all I see is like how big this volume is, not even thinking about the fact that like it might not continue. Right? I just thought to myself, this volume's so big, like it's going to do $1 billion by the end of the day. And if it's going to do $1 billion, I want to be overnight. Or I want to take it overnight. And so I buy it like literally at the top here, right? Not only do I buy at the top, I buy double the size I want. I just want to start in, right? I just want a feeler. I just want to get in so I don't have any FOMO and just see how it trades. But no, I double down, I double click, And now I have this size here at the top. And instead of like quickly reacting and selling, again, I'm just so caught up in the volume without ever thinking about that it doesn't have to maintain itself, that I just, not only do I not cut it, but then I actually not double down. I add another third. So another 50% on what I already have here, right? Telling myself, if this breaks 5 cents, I'm going to cut it. So lo and behold, I cut it. Again, because I have more size than I want, I lose like 7 or 8K. Already stupid, already way more than I needed to lose. I shouldn't have been losing more than 4 to 5, and here I am losing, almost double that at 8. But then I realized, yep, this is holding 5 cents. Let me rebuy it. Okay, this finally was much smaller size. The size I bought here is the size I should have bought up here. Looks okay, but then all of a sudden you can see it just getting sideways. You can see the volume getting much lower than where the morning spike happened, and it cracks. I sell it again for another, $2,500 loss. So again, another 11K loser here. Just due to being an idiot, right? Like this nothing. I don't upset that I gave it 2 tries. I'm just upset that I maybe let my emotions get the best of me and FOMO'd in, and then double click nonetheless. When really, if I just waited midday, like most times I do with longs, could have waited for midday to prove to me that it wasn't going to hold, because clearly this doesn't look like it's holding to me at all. And even late day, like this isn't a strong late day. It should have been well back above 6 cents in my opinion if I was going to go. And so again, just another stupid loser, too oversized. But again, I still would have taken a loss on it either way. There's no real perfect way to do that or go around that for me. So that's why I say like 2.5 mistakes. Again, one mistake, first mistake being KZIA, second mistake, just how I handled SERV in general. And then 2.5 taking, my loss on SLNA that like wouldn't have been a winner in any way, shape or form, but it could have been at least half the damage, right? So there's that. Another gap and crap. I don't think I have the thing up, but WRNT warrant. Let's go to another chart here. This was a really good one. Let me just make the chart bigger. Just got crushed. Made 7K on this one. Do I have a chart above it? Let's get rid of LUMN here. SERV. Oh yeah. So here's the SERV trade. Again, terrible entry on the starter. Like I got it thinking it was going to go 6. It was the bottom, and then actually added size up here to get to this high 7s average. Didn't cut it, didn't downsize, and then had to take it for slippage up here. So there's that one. WRNT. This was again another really good one. This one again I did not short out the open, but I just saw how weak it was, and I just said screw it. Like it was one of those things where I just read the tape and the price action. And I was like, yeah. Do I love shorting it at like 51, 52 after just being at 60 cents? No, I don't love that. But like, I just, in the moment, in the price action and tape, I was like, this thing is so heavy. Like this is just going to go lower. I don't know how low, but it's going to go lower. And lo and behold, just like XTIA, it went to red green. And so I covered it the rest of there at like, 29.30. Again, locked in 7K. So that was kind of cool. A good addition to that. And then again, we talked about SERV, on my 6K recovery a little bit on that day. The only other frequently traded ticker here was LUMN, LUMN. If we go into like a chart here, let's get rid of some of these other tabs. It's LUMN here. Traded this a few times. Thankfully, 2 wins and a loss. Tried to short it for a red day on this day, on the 31st. I think whoever watched Good Morning NASDAQ, you guys saw that I made money on it. Unfortunately, and in hindsight, covering it all right here into this move was the best option, because as you can see, it just grinded all the way back. And so if you go to my trades, this was all live. So not this ad and this cut, but this short and then this cover was all live. You guys, I think the live ended as it was starting to bounce, but I told myself, I'm going to give it a little bit of time. In fact, if it bounces, 260, I actually would look to add into view app and hopefully get another pullback, and if not a new low a day, back into the 230s. And unfortunately, it just didn't do that. Just grinded back. I covered it over red green. I said, something's off here. This is just way too strong. And thankfully I did, because it literally didn't stop, right? Thankfully, still locked in about $2,500. Again, unfortunately, if I locked it all in the 230s when it first got there, it would have been about a 4 or 5K winner. So gave about half my loss back. So not a big deal, but nonetheless, still something that just wasn't great, right? And then on top of that, when it broke out the next day, over this high. This high was, 344-ish. I did buy that breakout out this open at the morning spike. Unfortunately, only got half size. Just it was so strong, I just didn't fill on the second order or the second buy order, and it just went. Never was down again. And it sold it all or sold most of it in in sub 4, right, high 3s, and then a little bit over 4, and then I had a little piece left, and then they PR'd, and so the crack on that PR, I just didn't even care to read it. I was like, no, thanks. I'm gonna sell it. The rest, getting locked in because I had half size, about another $2,500 here, so that's cool. But then again, going into like August trades already. Yesterday, I did get chopped up here. I got short. Thought I was going to die, came back, covered it, reshorted, covered on this dip, and said, I'm not going to deal with this choppiness. I wanted a trend. Like I wanted this move or a this move. Nothing in between where it's just back and forth. And so the fact that it was giving me this, up, down action, I said, no, screw that. I'll take my small, like 2K and a half loser and be done with it. Yeah, technically, I could have waited for sub 3 to cover, but honestly, my trade plan, I thought if this was going to work, it was going to go at least sub 280, maybe sub 270. And so the fact that it didn't either way, it was kind of a dud play either way, right? So yeah, that's that. Like I said, pretty much the last 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks, plus or minus the borrow fees, just kind of broke even, so to speak. It was really the first 2 weeks that really came down to the whole piece of the pie. But again, it's much more easy to say that in hindsight than not. But yeah, overall, I'm still happy with it. Again, like I said, those couple mistakes really could have, let's say the extra 30K on KZIA. Let's say I made, 15K on SERV, and then let's say I saved 5K on the loser of SLNA. That's another 50K. We would have been, at around 130, 140 range here. So it happens. It's okay. No big deal. We're still having a really just great year in general. Decent start to August, up 8K. So yeah, we'll see you guys at the end of August. Typically, August has not been a great month for me. And by great month, I mean great month in comparison to previous months. So like last year was 21K. Again, that's not bad, except for the fact that it was like well in the bottom tier of all my months. It was like the bottom third month of the year. Same thing with 2022, 12K, very low on the bottom tier. 2021, August was 34K, which is good, but the thing about it, how crazy 2021 was, I would have thought this would be bigger. I don't remember the month specifically back then, but just how crazy this year was in particular, I thought it would be bigger. August for 2020 was good because 2020 was crazy, and then you go back to 2019 where things were really slow for me at a $1,200 month there. So after just following a 16K month, I think this was my new biggest month at the time in July 2019, then to be followed by one of my lowest profitable months in well over, I think, a year at that point. So August has given me pretty low end to subpar, months. Doesn't mean this one can be different. I'm just going to go in with low expectations, right? So anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and good luck in your guys' August, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.